Hey guys, you're about to watch a clip from our Journo Insight show, me and Neil Jones having a big old chat about Liverpool's managerial search, with the news, of course, that Ruben Amorim looks like he's not going to be the next Liverpool manager. We spoke about Slot, Frank, this clip, of course, about Gary O'Neill, loads more. If you want to check out the entire show in video or podcast form, it's over on redmenplus.com now. If you sign up as a yearly captain, use the promo code RACE when you do so, RACE, and you'll get 50% off. So you'll get a year's worth of content for half price. You can check out the entire show and everything else we do. Right, let's get on with this one. I want to bring one more name in that we haven't really spoken about too much. We've spoken about him in passing, but I do want to talk about Gary O'Neill because Liverpool have, the Bournemouth connections are clear. Michael Edwards, Richard Hughes, Gary O'Neill's worked at Liverpool himself. Obviously, a few years ago, he's third favourite on the bookies list. I'm looking at Twitter now, and his name's flying about quite heavily as well, with reports that maybe he could be in the mix. The question with Gary O'Neill, and I don't know if you'll know the answer, but for something to discuss, is he good enough to be Liverpool's manager? What is he shown he is? Because I think, to be fair to him, if you said taking over a team whose manager left a week before the season started because they were worried about FFP and signing players, that is a difficult challenge. He was probably harshly treated a little bit by Bournemouth when they got rid of him when they did, but just keeping Bournemouth up and getting Wolves to mid-table in the Premier League, that's a big difference from managing Liverpool Football Club. Yeah, compete for titles, compete for Champions League. That's a massive gap there.
It is. It absolutely is. He's less qualified than Brendan Rodgers was, and people question whether Brendan Rodgers was qualified. I do like him. I do. I mean, I know he made an impact on Monday Night Football, didn't he? When he was speaking well, and he's got that. He's very modern in terms of that, media trained, and he sort of knows he's a coach, isn't he? You can hear in everything that he does. There's clarity in what he's talking about, or the message he wants to get across. That's good. I think if he had two more seasons, or even one more season at a similar or better level than he's at the moment, I think he'd be a very interesting candidate. It feels early. To me, it feels early in his managerial career for him, to sort of. I don't think he would necessarily be scared of it, but it would feel like, there'd be a moment that if he was to take that Liverpool job or be offered the Liverpool job, where he'd have to go, am I ready for this? I know he's done he's done a fair apprenticeship at lower level. He was obviously at Liverpool as Barry Lutus's assistant. By all accounts, he was quite popular in terms of with the players, his methods and things like that. The relationships is interesting because, of course, the Bournemouth connection and the Portsmouth connection from back in the day with Michael Edwards, with David Woodfine, with Richard Hughes is clear. But Richard Hughes was the technical director of Bournemouth and chose not to hire him, and hired Andoni Iraola instead. So there's no guarantee that just because they are pally that he gets the job for the boys type of thing. Hughes has shown in the past that actually that isn't the case. So, but it does. Yeah, I think he's a potentially an interesting candidate somewhere down the line. But I feel like I don't know. I feel like that would be a really, really bold move from Liverpool and from him actually to do that at this moment in time. I think it's too soon.
Yeah, it's one of them. Like, if you, again, I'm going back to Emery, by the way. It's just been reported on Emery that he's staying. David Ornstein's reported he's just extended his contract, so we can rule Emery out. We're off the list.
As I say, Villa were not gonna let him go without a fight.
They didn't. Yeah, they were already boxing him off. Back to O'Neill. If you can't turn Liverpool down. I know Xabi Alonso turned Liverpool down, but Xabi Alonso's managing the Champions League next year, and he's about to win the league. Well, he has won the league. He's on for a potential treble. Like, he's got the cachet where he doesn't need to gamble. You mentioned before, if this was 18 months, 2 years ago, Steven Gerrard would have just been the next Liverpool manager. Yeah. It's amazing how quickly things can change.
Exactly.
And we saw this with, you mentioned like Graham Potter there.
That's what I'm saying.
I think he's got to take it, but like you are right. It's a huge gamble if he was someone like him.
That's what I'm saying. It's hard to get a handle on how good a manager is. I think it's really, I think you can see there's obvious people who are just very good managers, and you can see that they're very good managers because everywhere they go, Klopp's the perfect example. Everywhere you go, He lifts the team he's at. He gets on with the fans, that they love him, and the players love him. And that, that's obvious, isn't it? That he's a good manager. But there's others that, I'll go back retro if you like. But so Alan Kirbishley at Charlton, I would defy anyone to tell me that Alan Kirbishley was not a brilliant manager, because what he did at Charlton was unbelievable. But when he went elsewhere, people started all of a sudden say he became actually, he's not that good, or his star fell. You look at, there's other managers that have had jobs. I'm going back. This is Premier League years, sort of element, but there's other managers that if you look back at the betting for jobs, like England job, for example, there've been managers in that list where you go, whatever happened to him? Yeah. John Gregory. Yep. Aston Villa, Owen Coyle when he was at Burnley. Yeah, he was on the Liverpool shortlist at one stage. There's Alan Pardew at the moment where if you stop the moment in time, you forget what they became and the sort of the joke figure maybe that they became, or the sort of the caricature. If you stop the moment in time after that 2006 FA Cup final, and when Alan Pardew, what about him as a manager? You go, I'll tell you what, he's done well at Reading. He's gone there, he's got them up, he's got them to a cup final. They were that close to winning the cup final. He's got a bright future. Didn't happen, did it? He actually got Newcastle virtually almost into the Champions League. Like subsequently, there's a lot of managers that at a certain moment in time, they're the ones, and then 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, 2 years later, they're forgotten. And I think that shows how difficult it is to appoint a manager. That how do you know that someone is actually they're the real deal, or they're just on that little wave of ups and downs, and they're going to be like that for their whole career? Sometimes it is a gamble that you have to take, and it pays off, and it pays off handsomely. Sometimes the gamble doesn't pay off. Yeah. Sometimes you don't. You want to take the safe option. Absolutely. I want to circle back to the point you made there, Neil. I think it was a great one actually, in that Hughes was part of the Bournemouth setup that decided Gary O'Neill wasn't the man for them. If he, again, his name's all over social media at the moment, maybe he's being spoken to, or I don't know, but like that kind of contradicts that. Like if he didn't think he was good enough to be the Bournemouth manager, or someone in the club didn't, is what changes? Or you can flip it the other way. If they deemed Iraola was a better fit, why not him? Why wouldn't he see that? Why wouldn't he deem? Yeah. So, of course, a lot of reasons for that. Potentially, it could have been, look, actually, maybe you need to go and show it somewhere else, or with a different issue. Maybe they deem that actually what you're really good at, or what we think you're really good at, is actually just not what we really need at this moment in time. That might be different 12 months on, 18 months on, whatever. But you're right. Yeah, of course. There's this assumption, and we've all, I said it as soon as Michael Edwards was appointed, and obviously it was announced that Jurgen was leaving. We already knew that. Don't rule out Eddie Howe and Gary O'Neill coming into the frame, because they are respected, liked and admired by Michael Edwards and the people around him, because they've got long-lasting relationships. They've had umpteen conversations and sort of, dialogues about styles of play and what they want to do and recruitment and all these kind of things. They're not far off in terms of their thinking about the game, but doesn't mean that they get the job, because one of the things that's made Michael Edwards pretty successful is that he's quite cold and ruthless, and he doesn't just do sort of emotional things and go, well, actually, we've had some great nights out together, so let's give him the job. Does that maybe give some of these candidates we're talking about, who, if you asked, I reckon if you went down to town now and said, do you want Gary O'Neill as your next Liverpool manager, you'd get an overwhelm. You'd be hard pressed to get a yes. It would not be a popular appointment at this moment. Michael Edwards probably doesn't care. That's what I'm saying. You mentioned that if his data and all this stuff that we know he likes says he's the man, he will hire him. I don't think he'd really. I would also think that. I think the sample size is very small with Gary O'Neill. 77 Premier League games. It would be very hard to imagine that the process come out and went, oh, it's him. It would be unlikely that you would think that it would come out and go. You might come out and say, I tell you what, he's one to watch and he's an interesting candidate and he's starting to tick a few of the boxes. We were talking about Xabi Alonso being early in his managerial career, you know, even though he was an overwhelming favourite, and I think it would have been a very popular choice, we did have doubts about, well, actually, you know, this is his first season, and, you know, like, maybe we want to see him in the Champions League, and maybe you'd want to see what he's like if he loses a couple of his best players, or you know, he goes through a little bit of an injury crisis or whatever. That on top with Gary O'Neill would be the case, wouldn't it? I'd be very interested to know what process would spit out someone like him and say, he's your next Liverpool manager. I could see the process spitting him out and saying, put him on your shortlist for future. You know, if he carries on at a certain level, we'll monitor his progress. But yeah, I couldn't see how he could be the number one choice, if you like.
We'll find out. Like I say, it's mad how these things develop. I'm getting all kinds of messages into me about Gary O'Neill and Emery and Slot. It moves so fast.
Yeah, look, I think one thing we've seen is that there's going to be twists, isn't it? You know, I think, like I say, I fully expected Amorim to be the guy. At
the minute, it's throw it up and we've got no idea. It's interesting.
It is definitely interesting, but it's going to be, you know, it's going to be a very, very uncertain start to whoever takes over, I think, because people are they'll get the support and they'll get the intrigue and there'll be potential there, but there'll also be a lot of people who can pull a threads and say, well, you know, is that going to work, or what about if that happens? I think that was probably the case, whoever took over, because the previous manager's been so universally popular, hasn't he, and universally successful.
Hey, thank you so much for checking out the content today. If you want to get your name in and amongst these wonderful people, then head to redmenplus.com. Join as a Legend tier subscriber. You're going to get free merchandise codes. You're going to get in our Discord, and you're going to get your name at the end of YouTube videos. Yes, redmenplus.com, Legend tier status.